Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the first meeting of 2021 of the Mansfield Shire Council. Welcome to councillors, welcome to Madam CEO, welcome to the executive and staff, and importantly, welcome to ratepayers and residents who may be online at the moment. We have a fairly full agenda, so if we can go straight to item 2, just to make sure everyone can be seen and heard on Zoom in terms of the councillors. Can I call on each councillor and ask them to confirm verbally that they can see all councillors and hear the proceedings? Firstly, Councillor Rabi.
I confirm, Mr. Mayor, that I can see the proceedings and hear everybody.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Slatton.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can see everybody and hear everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Tan.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I can see and hear everyone.
And Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Can confirm I can hear the proceedings and see all councillors and council officers.
Thank you. Item 3, Madam CEO, do we have any apologies? Sorry,
No apologies. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Item 4, the statement of commitment. I'll read the statement and then call on each councillor to confirm their commitment. As councillors of Mansfield Shire, we're committed to ensuring our behaviour meets the standards set by the Mansfield Shire Council Code of Conduct and Councillor Charter. We will at all times faithfully represent and uphold the trust placed in us by the community. Could I ask each councillor to confirm the statement of commitment? Councillor Slatton.
I confirm my commitment, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Rabi.
I confirm my commitment, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Tan.
I confirm my commitment.
And Councillor Webb.
I confirm my commitment, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. Item 5, the acknowledgement of country. If Deputy Mayor Councillor Tan could recite councillor's acknowledgement of country.
Certainly. Our meeting is being held on the lands of the Taungurung people, and we wish to acknowledge them as traditional owners. We'd also like to pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and Aboriginal elders of other communities who may be here today.
Thank you, Councillor Tan. If I can call on councillors in turn, ask them to declare whether they have any conflicts of interest. Councillor Rabi.
Mr. Mayor, I have no conflicts of interest in relation to any of the agenda items.
Councillor Slatton.
I have no conflicts of interest in relation to any of the agenda items for tonight's meeting. Thank you.
Councillor Tan.
I have no conflicts of interest in relation to any agenda items tonight.
Councillor Webb.
I have no conflicts of interest in relation to any of the agenda items tonight, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillors. And I also have no conflicts of interest in relation to any agenda items. Item 7 is the confirmation of the previous minutes. Could I ask the councillor to move the motion for that, please? Councillor Webb, move the motion and second it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The motion being that the minutes of the Mansfield Shire Council meeting held on 15th of December 2020 be confirmed as an accurate record.
Thank you, Councillor Webb. And seconding the motion? Councillor Tam. Is there any discussion at all on that?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Those in favour? Thank you. Motion is passed. Point 8 is representations. Madam CEO, do we have any representations for tonight's meeting?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, we do. On behalf of the Forest Fire Management Victoria and signed by Aaron Kennedy, who is the Deputy Chief Fire Officer for the Hume region, Council has been awarded a certificate of commendation for our outstanding service, collaboration and commitment in support of the Forest Fire Management Victoria and the community during the 2019-2020 bushfire season in northeast Victoria. So, Mr Mayor, in the absence of Mr Kennedy, I table the certificate for Council. And I'll just show you that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr Mayor, we also have deputations to item 13.2.1, which is an application for planning permit at 12 Hunter Street, Mansfield. We have Mr Steenhouse, who will address Council in relation to the item, who is the applicant, and we also have a Ms Joanne Cooper and Mr Gary Phillips, who are objectors and will present as one deputation for the same item. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Madam CEO. The next item on the agenda is the Mayor's report. I'll take it, the report is being read, and ask for a motion regarding that. Thank you, Councillor Webb. Are there any seconders to the motion?
Mr Mayor, just that motion that Council receives the Mayor's report for the period 16th of December to 13th of January 2021.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. I'm jumping ahead of the... Thank you, Councillor Sladen, for seconding it. Those for? That motion is carried. Thank you. Item 11 is the reports from council appointed representatives. With respect to the committees there, is there Australia Day, if we work through these, the Australia Day Awards Committee, is there any comment from any of the councillors on that? Anyone would like to make?
No, there's been no further, since the last meeting, action in that the Australia Day Awards Committee.
Thanks, Councillor. Mansfield Shire CEO performance and remuneration. I don't think there's been anything on that since the previous meeting as well. Goulburn Broken Greenhouse Alliance. Councillor Webb.
Yes, Mr Mayor, thank you. We did meet just shortly after our previous council meeting. So I attended and chaired this meeting on 17th of December. And just to give a bit of background to the other councillors and to those members of the public watching, the Goulburn Broken Greenhouse Alliance, it's a formal alliance of the 13 councils across this region. And essentially they're committed to delivering actions to achieve climate change mitigation and adaptation and sharing projects that support that sustainable low carbon community development. They advocate at a state and federal level on environmental policy and sustainable energy and efficient and affordable housing, amongst other things. Our meeting, we did have a guest speaker, Dr. Tayana O'Donnell. She works from the ANU and she works in climate risk and law. And she's recently published a paper around the roles and responsibilities of local government in regards to climate adaptation. And essentially this paper contains practical advice to meet the needs of councils. And her presentation was just around the liability of councils regarding either action or inaction on climate change, which we know is now legislated in the new Local Government Act 2020. The Alliance has been working on a number of key projects, just in particular interest. They recently completed, they call it the Main Road Streetlight Project, which is just upgrading streetlights to LED globes, which sounds like a minor thing, but it actually did pass on significant savings in terms of actual energy costs, as well as greenhouse emissions. And I understand Mansfield participated in that program, and I believe they're looking to start stage 2 of that project, start the ball rolling of that sometime soon. Another interesting project they're working on, they're calling it Charging the Hume region, which relates to setting a network of EV or electric vehicle chargers in the whole Hume region. Particularly, they're anticipating, and based on the data they have available to them, anticipating that electric vehicles the sales of them are increasing at a rapid rate, and they're expected to reach price parity by about 2023 or 2025. So basically what they're anticipating is that we could actually be at risk of missing a subset of tourism, because if we don't have a suitable EV network, people won't be able to come and visit us because their vehicles won't be able to be charged. So earlier this year, there was a huge Victorian government grant in Western Victoria, which signals that there is possibility of Eastern Victoria having the same. Other than that, we sort of just ran around some of the other projects which they've been working on, and an introduction to the team. But I'm very excited to be a part of that particular group, and looking forward to doing some good work with them.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Are there any questions on it at all from the other councillors? Moving on, the Hume Regional Local Government Network. It hasn't met, but it will be meeting on Friday, the 5th of February. The Lake Eildon Land and On-Water Management Plan, Implementation Committee, Councillor Sladen.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. The committee met on the 17th of December, and the actions that arose from that, or the agenda items for that meeting, included that Goulburn Murray Water have put up new signage around the Delatide Arm to advise the camping below the full water line is prohibited. So they conducted a bit of an education process over the previous couple of months. Land above the full water line is Delwip land. However, that's exempt from the Goulburn Murray Water bylaws. Under the settlement agreement with Tungarong, this land is now jointly managed with Delwip and with Tungarong. However, enforcement of camping below the waterline will commence next month in February 2021. Waste continues to be a problem, and an education approach is currently underway. Vic Parks, they can request campers to clean up their waste to move on, but unfortunately Vic Parks have no authority to enforce any of that, which is rather unfortunate. Goulburn Murray Water have gone through a transformation so that what was known as the dams team, they're now known as water storage, but basically have the same function. The intent is for Goulburn Murray Water to have more recreation staff and provide backup should one staff member not be available. And hope, well, they're saying that there are no services being removed from the recreation space, because that was a concern that with the restructure of Goulburn Murray Water, that would in fact happen. As we are all aware, there is a blue-green algae alert for Lake Eildon and for Lake Nilakudi. According to Goulburn Murray Water, there's supposed to be 0% water contact, but as we're all aware, the lake has certainly been extremely busy over the Christmas period and continues to be getting a lot of use. Goulburn Murray Water also sent out an expression of interest for development opportunities for parcels of land around the lake. And I'm aware that the Pepin Hub community group have actually put in an expression of interest for that. And although Goulburn Murray Water are not actively seeking or promoting development opportunities, they have advertised these parcels of land for expressions of interest. That process is still being undertaken. That's about it, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sladen. Any questions at all? Councillor Tan?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Sladen, just interested about the no camping below the full supply level in the Delatide Arm. Does that only apply to the Delatide Arm, or does it apply to other areas around the lake?
It is a Goulburn Murray Water bylaw, Councillor Tian, which does apply to all around the lake, but the Delatide Arm Reserve is obviously a very popular spot for campers. And so that's where they have started increasing their or improving their signage. Just one aside with the signage is that they've actually used some beautiful artwork that's come from the Tungarong Land and Water Council for that signage. So that will eventually be rolled out around the lake. Yeah, sorry, that's just an aside. So to answer your question, Councillor Tian, yes, it does apply to the whole of the lake, the whole 515 kilometres.
Thanks, Councillor. Any other questions? Okay, Mansfield Shire, moving on, Mansfield Shire Council Audit and Risk Committee, that hasn't met since the previous meeting. The Mansfield Shire Business and Community Recovery Advisory Committee. Councillor Sladen, would you like to update that?
Yes, certainly, Mr. Mayor. We had our second meeting last night. Given the holiday period, there was not a lot of movement over the holiday period. All the commercial operators certainly who sit on the committee certainly expressed their satisfaction with the busy visitor period, and obviously very well utilised the town was, as we are all aware. Staffing does remain an issue for the hospitality, not just hospitality, but across the Shire. But they, through the Mansfield District Business Association, they are looking at ways to come up with solutions for the staffing issue, particularly in the hotel and the hospitality area. One piece of good news: at the last meeting, I mentioned that there are 2 grant opportunities available, one for communities and one for either community or business, one large grant of $100,000. The timeline or the deadline for expressions of interest for that has been extended until March, the end of March. Pardon me. However, we haven't heard back yet whether there's been an extension for the community grants applications, which at the moment close on the 1st of February next week. So those community groups who have registered on the community, with Council's community register, have been contacted and have been reminded that there is funding out there available. And obviously we do encourage all community groups to put in a submission for that. I believe, Mr. Mayor, that's probably the most crucial points, unless you wanted to add something that I've missed.
No, thanks, Councillor Sladen. That's a good summary. Thank you very much. Any questions on that at all? Councillor Tan?
Yes, Councillor Sladen or Mayor Holcomb. What has been the uptake of those grants from that fund? And can you give us an update on perhaps how much of that money has been allocated thus far?
Okay, so for those 2 particular grant programs, no money has been allocated thus far because applications are still being received. There has certainly been an amount of interest in both programs. However, this hasn't resulted in a large number of applications to date. For the community one, I believe it was only 2 or 3, but there was another half a dozen or so, inquiries being made. Given that the large 3-year event, the $100,000 seed funding event, has been extended to March for applications, there has been a number of inquiries, but there's no applications have come in for that yet. Councillor Tian, does that answer your question?
Yeah, for those grants and the other part of the fund, is that
okay? Yep.
No, there was some other projects.
Yes, and I'm going to, there's no one here I can refer to, so that's okay. I'm going to say that a large proportion of the funds have been committed or spent in terms of the marketing. Some filming has been done. There's certainly been some photographic stock imagery being taken for businesses to utilise. I believe all but $100,000 has been committed, but I may defer here to CEO Ms. Conrick if she can help me out on that one, please.
Thank you, Councillor Sladen. Through you, Mr. Mayor. So there's the three buckets, just to recap on the three buckets. The bucket that Councillor Sladen was just talking about is the 660,000, and that was council put a submission in January 2020, just as the bushfires really were still unfolding, and that was mainly around getting the tourist visitors back into the region, given Mansfield Shire had shut down. So all those activities around marketing, or as Councillor Sladen had said, assisting businesses with the attracting tourists. So a lot of that is still unfolding, given we had COVID straight away afterwards and there was no point in marketing. So most of that fund is still just kicking off. The other two components, the 200,000 and the 200,000, 300,000 of that is going towards the grants that Councillor Sladen spoke about just a moment ago, and 100,000 is yet unallocated. Council is still waiting on another application it has in, and depending on the success or otherwise of that application, that will direct Council around how to spend the 100,000.
Thank you, Ms. Conrick. And if I can just continue just briefly, Mr. Mayor and Councillor Tehan, another successful funding program that has occurred is the outdoor dining activation funding, which Council received additional funding from the state government for the purchase and hire of outdoor dining infrastructure. That has been extended, and that has been very warmly welcomed by the hospitality industry within the Mansfield Shire, and has been very well utilised, and that will continue through to the end of March, I believe, Madam CEO.
We are hoping to cover Easter with it, but
okay.
yeah, it's been extended.
Yep.
Thank you, Councillor Burton. Thank you, Madam CEO. Any further questions there? Councillor Raby.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just interested to know how much of this funding and has gone to our outlying communities with respect to businesses in Jamison and Bonnie Doon. Have we got any figures on that?
Maybe Madam CEO.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. All the outlying hospital, so the $250,000 for activating outdoor dining was for hospitality businesses. Takeaway businesses did not qualify under the government's guidelines. So it was for hospitality businesses that could extend their dining. So I understand the Jamison store took that up. So all outlying areas were offered. The hospitality businesses were all contacted at the time. And I know that Jamison is one of the businesses that wants to extend that time and keep it over Easter. But Bonnie Doon we were in contact with Bonnie Doon, told me that all the outlying communities were contacted. Some businesses decided not to take up the offer of extending, and I understand that we had 70% of our hospitality industry take up the offer.
Yeah, if I can just add there, Councillor Raby, in terms of Bonnie Doon, certainly the Bonnie Doon Hotel was approached, but given their existing infrastructure, they had no requirement for those marquees, etc., given their wonderful outdoor dining area already. But I will add here, Mr. Mayor, is on the events, in the event space, the Lake Eildon Festival will proceed on the 20th of February. And also there was funding out of this program for the Australia Day celebrations and the movie night the night before. So that's all part of this fund as well, or this program. And indeed Targa as well on the 5th to the 7th of February. So those events are proceeding, and we look forward to those events occurring. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Sladen. If there's no more questions, the next Municipal Association of Victoria, MAV, that hasn't met as yet in terms of in this council, in our council, new council. The next committee is the North East Local Government Waste Forum. Councillor Rabi, do you have anything to add there?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. No, I don't. They haven't met. The next meeting, I believe, is in March.
Thank you. And the Rural Councils of Victoria hasn't met as yet either. With that, do we have a motion to be moved by the councillors? Councillor Tam?
Yeah, I'd like to move the motion that the council note the verbal reports provided by councils in relation to their representation on external committees.
Thank you, Councillor Tam. Do we have a seconder? Thanks, Councillor Raby. Are those in favour? Thank you. Motion is carried. Item 12 is public question time.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We don't have any questions for tonight's meeting.
Thank you, Madam CEO. Item 13, we move to the officers' reports and the Chief Executive Officer's report. Madam CEO, would you like to comment? Colleen, we can't hear you.
I clicked off and on at the wrong time. Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I'll take the report as read for presenting to council.
Councillors, are there any questions or clarifications? Madam CEO, I just have one question. Just on the, with respect to the customer service and customer requests for the month, on OH&S, there's total events at 34 and 33 pending. Is that a lot of OH&S issues there?
No, Mr. Mayor, that would be reflecting the COVID safe environment that we're currently working within. So because as the government changed its requirements and restrictions, we've had a lot of OH&S work done. So the request would be coming in from our different facilities, and our OH&S officer has developed COVID safe plans for all those facilities. And there may be some others in that list because I haven't got it in front of me, but I would, I'm assuming it's all, most of it to do with COVID safe plans, but I could be wrong, and I'll follow up and get back to council. Take that on notice. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay. Do we have a motion with respect to the Mayor's CEO's report? Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A motion being that council receive and note the Chief Executive Officer's report for the periods 15th December 2020 to 13th of January 2021.
Do we have a seconder? Councillor Sladen, thank you. Are there any further questions or comments on that at all? Those in favour? Thank you. The motion is passed. We've reached item 13.2, Infrastructure and Planning Directorate. The responsible officer being General Manager of Infrastructure and Planning, Kirsten Alexander. Welcome, Kirsten. And the first item there is the application for a planning permit number P096/20, development of land, 7 dwellings at 12 Hunter Street, Mansfield. And And we have three representations. And I think Michael Steenhouse, the applicant, will be the first, giving the first presentation. Welcome, Michael, on behalf of the council.
Thank you, councillors.
Michael, have I pronounced your name correctly? Is it Steenhouse?
Steenhouse.
Okay, thank you.
Dutchy.
Right, welcome. Michael, you've got approximately 3 minutes just to give us a rundown on what we've got to already have a report which is documented.
No problem.
But look forward to hearing from him.
Thank you very much. Well, firstly, good evening, councillors. Thank you for the invitation to speak in regards to the application for a planning permit for the development of the 7 dwellings at 12 Hunter Street in Mansfield. I'd like to start off by mentioning that the design of these dwellings were based around quite a bit of research. We spoke to residents of Mansfield along with local real estate agents, and we learnt pretty quickly that there's a severe lack of quality affordable housing that's walking distance to Mansfield town and infrastructure. That in the way of for sale and for rent. Many young first home buyers we heard about and families that are in Mansfield at the moment are encouraged to look further out of town as houses on full blocks are becoming financially out of reach. With a significant rise in Airbnb and short stay holiday accommodation in recent years, the supply of long-term rental properties has been diminishing. The local worker, for example, teacher, nurse or vet, who may move to Mansfield on placement, is now forced to rent property further out of town, away from amenities and infrastructure due to there being a lack of quality affordable rental properties available. We also believe that the single level dwellings at 1200 Street also meet the demand of a downsizer who may be looking for, sorry guys, I've got a pesky cat that's just jumped up on the desk just in time. For a downsizer that may be looking for low maintenance, accessible property within walking distance of the town. We've put a lot of focus, particularly on the design and character of the dwellings to be in keeping with the local area. We see an infill development, a suitable infill development like this, avoiding the need for valuable farmland on the outskirts of town continuously subdivided. Based on our early figures and estimates, we expect the dwellings to achieve between sort of $300,000 and $350,000 if sold. And we do believe the design, development and construction of these 7 dwellings not only meet the demand for affordable housing close to town, but also provide an attractive, stylish and high quality product for those that are currently finding it hard to buy or rent, and therefore increasing the livability of Mansfield town. So that's it. Thank you again, councillors. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have if that's necessary.
Thanks, Michael. Councillors, any questions of Michael? Councillor Raby?
Hello, Michael. Welcome to our council meeting. Michael, I believe you're from Melbourne, is that correct?
Yep, correct.
How do you propose to build this development? Are you going to be bringing up builders from Melbourne or using local tradesmen?
No, certainly not. So the builder for the development will be my father, who does live up there in Mansfield. He's built up there before, and he's previously from Melbourne, but has moved up to the high country. Any build that he's done up there so far has been using local trades, local carpenters, plumbers, concreters, etc. So everything will be local, I guess, with this project. There'll be nothing that will be outsourced if we can avoid it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Any other questions, councillors? Michael, I have a question. If there's no other questions from councillors,
No problem.
Are you intending to subdivide this? What's your plans going forward on this?
With the project?
Correct.
Well, our plan is obviously, to get the permit, and then we're not quite sure yet, depending on what happens at the time, whether we do sell all of them or whether we retain some of them and rent them out. But if we do rent them, our our objective, of course, is to fill the demand of long-term rentals and affordable long-term rentals in town. So yes, your question was to subdivide or to sell? I didn't quite catch that.
No, well, if you don't subdivide, and
They will be subdivided, correct?
sorry,
They
You're
will
saying?
be subdivided.
they will be. So there'll
Yep,
be some
certainly.
coming through.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep,
Thank you.
100%.
Thank you. Councillors, are there any other questions? Councillor Sladen.
Yes, Councillor Sladen.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Michael. This is a question for yourself and probably also the stat planner. In terms of the clause 55 and the outdoor space,
Yep.
can you just explain to me how the outdoor space of those buildings comply with clause 55?
Yeah, well, thanks for the question, Councillor Sladen. I'm not the designer, so I'm the developer. As far as I'm aware, the planner hasn't come to us with any concerns or changes or requirements. So I'm happy to answer that, but it's probably best that I speak to the planner and with the draftsman to be able to get you the right answer, because I'm probably not the right person to be answering that particular question. But as far as I know, there hasn't been anything that's come to us previously from the planner or any concerns.
Okay, thank you.
So our impression is that it's compliant without hearing anything.
Mr. Mayor, perhaps we could hear from the planners?
Yeah, I was just about to say, Kirsten, would you like to take that question?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. It is actually confirmed in the report that the proposal complies with all the clause 55 requirements. I can get a further comment if required.
Yeah, I thank you, Ms. Alexander. I did note that in the report, in the section of the objections, it says all, but then further down in the report it says mostly all of clause 55, and that just I'm just looking for confirmation that that does not include the outdoor space, given the number of or the scale of the development on the land there. Granted, it is within the existing residential zone, but just making sure that we don't have these smaller buildings with postage stamp backyards. That's all. So that's all I would like to check on. That's all.
Happy to get a further comment on that through you, Mr. Mayor, to our acting manager planning.
Please do.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of secluded and other private open space, each unit is required to have 25 square metres of secluded private open space and a total of 40 square metres of private open space as distinct from secluded. And that includes the area, because this is not yet a subdivided area, it's taken as the entire lot. So the area within the front 9 metre setback is also included in the open space for this development. I've checked through those numbers today. The only error I found was in a suggestion on the plans to show that there was 110 metres of secluded private open space to the rear unit. In fact, secluded private open space has to have a minimum dimension of 3 metres. And for some of that open space, the dimension was only 2 point something. But notwithstanding that, the courtyard area adds up to just over 33 square metres of secluded private open space, which meets the requirement.
Excellent. Thank you for that response, Acting Manager.
Thank you, Michael.
My pleasure.
Are there any other questions just for Michael leaves us? Thanks, Michael. Thank you very much for your time. It's very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, councillors. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have in the in the waiting room. Is that right, Mandy?
Joe's just coming in now.
Joe, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Hello.
Hello. How are you? Sorry. Joe, it's Mark Holcomb speaking as the mayor.
Yes.
So it's you and Gary together presenting?
Yes. Yes. He's not here at the moment. He's working.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much for coming on, and thank you for your time. So how we work it is you've got about 3 minutes to give us a bit of a rundown on what your concerns, and then we'll throw it open to the councillors for questions, if that's okay with you.
Right. Yeah. The most we're worried about is the density of the project. It's twice the size of Travis Purcell's, and he was allowed to do 7 on an acre, but this one next door is on half an acre, so it's double the density of that one. There's four two-story units in there. The builder hasn't been able to tell us the distance from the fence to the windows that will look into the block next door. We've asked him for that. It wasn't advertised in the paper, and nobody in our street, I haven't talked to Trav, but were notified. We were notified. We got a letter. That was fine. But I think something as big as that really needs to be put out to the public of Mansfield, because it is a thing that might keep going on if it happens. Well, there's no provision that this set of 6 will be becoming short-term rentals. Only people buying it for B&Bs, which makes a high risk of making rentals affordable in Mansfield, because it won't be there. And I was just wondering, will he be using local tradesmen as well, being an outside company from Mansfield? Over the last 3 years, we've got 3 blocks that have been subdivided in this end of Mansfield, in the end of High Street, Hunter Street, and the 3 blocks, if they all get passed, they'll from 3 blocks with 3 houses, it'll go to 25 houses on those 3 blocks that were. So it's making it very dense down this end of the road. I'm sure the quality of the building will be fine, but there'll be it's not high quality for of living for people in such a small area. There's hardly any outdoor spaces in between them. And I have other problems with, if they become something like B&Bs, the amount of, not traffic, but cars, that won't be able to park in there, will be parking along Hunt Street and causing problems. So, there's a few things. We have spoken to him, the builder, face to face. Yes. But he hasn't come back with the, we've seen the plans, but there was no, what am I saying? It was supposed to come back with the distances and the measurements from the windows to so for looking into the property next door. It also devalues our block that we've got next door, which we're going to sell once it's subdivided. So having so many along the fence line.
Okay. Joanne, thank you for that, for those points you raised. If we can just throw a few questions, throw questions open to the councillors, and
yep.
Councillors, do you have any questions of Joe? Councillor Rabi?
Oh, hi, Joe. It's Steve Raby here, councillor.
Hi, Steve.
Hi. Joe, I note your concern about the car parking in the street. It's interesting that you brought that up because have you experienced more or less parking in the street down that end of Hunter Street?
Well, not as yet, because the units at the end aren't up yet. The ones that have been passed, that hasn't happened yet. And there has been the ones across the road that were in the first lot, but not a huge amount as yet. But it's just if you've got 7 units there, and if they go, you know, percentage go to Airbnb or something, you can imagine the amount of their 3-bedroom units, how many there could be up and down the street, you know, parked out the front, because there's not a lot of room in that block with 7 units on it.
Okay, I've got one more question, Joe, if that's okay. Your block must be number 14, is it?
14, 16, yeah.
Okay, so you're subdividing between your house and the proposed development, and that block would, I suppose, be called 14 then. How big is that block?
Ours, that block that's subdivided, half an acre.
So that the block that you're intending to subdivide next to the development would be half an acre?
Yeah.
Is that 2,000 square metres, do you know? Or?
I'm old, Steve. You know that. I'm old. I don't talk in metres.
Yeah, I know. Okay. All right. Thanks. That's all right. Half an acre.
Yeah. It's the same size as the block he's building on.
Oh, okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Councillor Tant?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Joe, James Tehan here. You had one query about whether he would be using local builders, and he was on before and he did assure us that he would be using local tradespeople to build.
Yeah.
The other thing I was just interested in is it is very high density. I agree with you. And there's one further down, a development further down the street.
Yes.
On the same side.
No, yeah, on the same side, but it's double the size of what he's putting. That block is double the size of what he's got next door, and he's putting the same amount of units on it that will be on that one.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I take that. And then obviously you're planning to subdivide lot number 14. What are your plans for that? How many dwellings were you looking at?
No, just subdividing it off into another block. We're not going to put anything on it.
At that stage, righto.
No.
No,
okay.
Sure. Yeah, okay. So it seems like there will be a fair bit more traffic down there and perhaps even foot traffic.
Yeah. Couldn't be any worse than the foot traffic that comes from the units over the back fence, because they can come through. They jump the fence.
Right.
Yeah. So, but yeah.
Just a couple of questions. Sorry, Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and g'day, Jay. I hope you're going all right. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to just address one of Joe's queries regarding Airbnb, and what exactly do we have in place, and I guess what regulations or what compliance protocol do we have in place in council to prevent, I guess, an influx of Airbnbs taking over our rentals in Mansfield? We know that affordable housing is really, really important at the moment. Talk to almost any resident, any real estate agent, they'll tell you there are 0 rentals and almost no houses to buy as well. So I guess through you, Mr. Mayor, to Madam CEO, I guess, would be the best to address this question. Could you give us a bit of an outline there?
Thank you, Councillor Webb, and through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, council is doing some work on affordable housing with some businesses locally, but if I can sort of intervene at this point, please, Councillor Webb, we probably need to stick to topic, because there is a planning application before council, and it's really not a planning matter in terms of the Airbnb, and I'm just reluctant to have that conversation for this with this item. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam CEO.
Yeah, see, I think there should be more affordable housing too, but there's so much affordable housing that has been taken off the market with people coming up, and there's about 60 Airbnbs in Mansfield already, and there's nobody can get. You've even got people that are coming into your business, the Shire, that can't get housing. They've got a job, but they can't get housing either. So it's a big thing. Mansfield's losing that. They're losing people. They're losing community because of sort of things like this that'll probably turn out to be, maybe some people will live there, but permanently. But I can't see it. I can just see it as people that'll be used as holiday places or holiday rentals.
Joe, just one question I'd like to ask the GM of Infrastructure and Planning, Kirsten Alexander. Kirsten, Joe's raised a couple of points about seven buildings on half an acre, 4 of which are 2-storey. I just want to show us that everything that has been put forward there fits within the planning regulations. So is there anything that's in that number per that size block that she should be concerned about from a legal perspective?
I will actually ask our Acting Manager Planning to advise on that one because it's quite a detailed question. I think the results are there in the report, but if there's anything further we could add.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, Council is, as a responsible authority, is required to apply the planning scheme to any application before it.
Michael, can you just turn your volume up, please?
Peter?
We're struggling to hear you.
Peter, yeah.
Oh, sorry, Peter. Sorry, Peter. Sorry.
That's all right. I'm not quite sure how I turn the volume up. Okay, I'll speak louder.
Speak louder, yes.
The essence of any planning application is that there be an appropriate site response to the application and a design response that meets the needs of the planning scheme. Now, in this instance, no matter that it seems like an excessive number of units on one block of land of this size, several of those units are just 2-bedroom units. And to address some of the inquiries about the objector, car parking has been provided in accordance with the scheme. A 2-bedroom or 1-bedroom unit requires 1 undercover car park, and a 3-bedroom dwelling requires 2 car parks, one of which must be undercover, and they've all been provided. Notwithstanding that, inevitably there will be times when some people will park out the front in the street. VCAT takes the position that the street is a public roadway and anyone is able to avail themselves of the car parking that's on the land, on the street. And so, notwithstanding the concerns of the neighbour, we can't base any form of objection to the application based on car parking. They've met the needs of the planning scheme. You might be aware that in Melbourne, for instance, and notwithstanding that this isn't Melbourne, the same planning controls in residential 1 zone apply, or the general residential zone apply there. You might get terrace houses on 180 square metres per block. Yes, they'll be side to side and they'll be accessed from a rear lane or something like that. So it's not about the absolute number of dwellings on a lot, rather the design response. And as per C. Hedges' application assessment, this application for these 7 units substantially complies with the requirements of the scheme. And when I say substantially, I say that only because just in case there's some number there that's out by 5% that I'm not aware of, but it meets the needs of the planning scheme, and therefore we advise you that we have, as officers, no technical reason to offer any form of refusal for the application.
Thank you, Per. Just one other point that Joe raised also, Ms. Alexander, the point that it didn't appear to be advertised in the paper. Do you have any comment on that?
That actually, it's through you, Mr. Mayor, that actually was addressed in the report. And I think the officers, there were a number of comments about that in the report in terms of it was advertised to the neighbours, which I think Joe has confirmed.
I know, not for 7 neighbours, no. And I probably sent it to me, Trav, and the 7 people that live in the units behind. We don't know. That's not advertising. You cannot say to me that the person who wants to build this, you leave it up to them to advertise. It's not. It's for the Shire to give it the ad. People look at that. We look at that all the time. People look at that advertisement for planning things. So it should be a Shire thing to let people know in Mansfield what's going on. We don't know what the overlay in Mansfield is now. It's changed. And as the other fellow just said, it's not Melbourne, but he's treating it. It's being treated like it's a Melbourne suburb, allowing that many units on one block.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor. If Ms. Cooper has finished speaking, we need to move on from there. Ms. Cooper can't respond to council and officers. So I'm sorry to cut you off, but that's inappropriate. So if Ms. Cooper has finished her 3 minutes in speaking and councillors don't have any further questions, we probably should say goodbye to her as we have done to the applicant.
Okay.
No worries, that's fine. I just had, thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you for your time. Thank you.
No worries. Thank you. Bye.
Just moving on. Councillors, is there any questions or clarification you want on the application? Councillor Riley?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, my concern is, I suppose, not specifically with this planning application, but generally for the Shire. I've looked at this application, and Mr. Steinhouse is saying that he's got a $1.5 million development, which is at odds with my figures. I was more like 2 and a bit million. And on the market, generally may be worth somewhere in the order of 2.8 to 3.5 million. So the question I suppose I have of the council officers is that given that it is a 7-unit development with the parking undercover as it is, I tend to think that there'll be probably 2 cars per unit, which is 14 cars coming onto our roads, which is a parking issue already. We've got to find more parking. I suppose drilling down into the question specifically is that with respect to developers' contributions towards the Shire, could you give me some sort of clarification around that? It seems to me that there will be more of these developments, and we're struggling at the moment with our infrastructure.
Councillor Kirsten?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will ask our acting planning manager to respond to that. I think he has an answer for you.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. In terms of contributions towards council for a subdivision when it occurs, a subdivision of this land would attract a 5% public open space contribution. That's based on the site value of the land, not on the capital improved value of the land. So from our perspective, in evaluating the land at that time, it ignores whatever's been built on the land. And so we have no interest in the value of the actual improvements. We are interested in the value of the assessment of the application construction costs, because the fee for the planning application varies depending on the predicted cost of the development, but it goes in fairly large chunks, from $100,000 to $500,000, from $500,000 to $1 million, from $1 million to $5 million. And so once it ticks over $1 million, you know, within reason, we're probably not going to be drilling down too closely to the actual dollar value.
Thank you very much, Acting Manager Peter. I appreciate your response. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Peter. Are there any other questions or clarification regarding the application? Councillors, do we have a motion with respect to, if we can take the recommendation as read, do we have a motion with respect to that recommendation? Councillor Sladen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I would like to move the recommendation as is on pages 13, 14, 15 and 16 of the council agenda. I won't read it all. So council, having considered all matters required under the section 60 of the Planning Environment Act and under the provisions of the planning scheme, issue a notice of decision to grant a planning permit, etc., etc.
Thank you, Councillor Sladen. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Raby, thank you. As Councillor Sladen, would you like to speak to your motion any further?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, again, as the report does state, this is that the land is already within an existing general residential zone, so it does fit the relevant components of the state and local planning policy frameworks. It is a development that is encouraged currently by council in terms of infill development, and the increase in availability of affordable housing is a priority for council. So I have no hesitation in recommending, in moving the recommendation as presented, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Sladen. Councillor Raby is seconded. Would you like to have any further comment?
Yes, I totally agree with Councillor Paul Sladen on this matter, that it ticks all the boxes for legalities, and we are struggling for affordable housing. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Any other councillors like to make any further comments? Councillor Webb?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Also want to echo the sentiments of Councillor Sladen. We need as much affordable housing as we can get right now, so I feel it's a good move to increase this.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. If there's no more comments, those in favour? Motion is passed. Thank you. Item 13.2 again is in the area of for application for planning permit number P11520, building and works at Mansfield Shire School. Responsible officer being General Manager of Instruction Planning, Kirsten Alexander. Are there any questions or clarifications required of the application? No questions at all, councillors? Ms. Alexander, is there anything that you'd like to add at all?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. No, I'll take the report as read.
Thank you. That being the case, would someone like to move if we take the recommendation as read, would someone like to move a motion accordingly? Councillor Raby, move it. Seconder. Councillor Sladen. Thank you. Councillor Raby, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to say that the Rudolph Steiner School has been a fantastic addition to our community in Mansfield. Although my children have not attended that school, there are a lot of people in this shire that have moved here to send their children specifically to that school. It's wonderful to see that they're growing still, and I support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Sladen, a seconder. Would you like to make any further comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, I agree with Councillor Rabi, but you know, in particular, having had a good look at this, well, yeah, had a very good look at this application. You know, the buildings they're very well designed. It's in keeping with the existing building. You know, the muted materials and colours that Steiner use. It really does fit into the not only the existing school buildings, but also the surrounding landscape. So I have no hesitation in supporting this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sladen. Would any other councillors like to make a comment? Okay, those in favour of the motion? Okay, the motion is passed. Thank you. Item 13.2 refers to the Infrastructure and Planning Directorate again with Kirsten Alexander, the Lake Eildon Asset Audit. Is there any questions or clarifications required of the report? Councillor Sladen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My question is to whoever is appropriate, is what is the current status of the updated Memorandum of Understanding between Council and Goulburn Murray Water as a result of the meeting that was held in September 2020?
Thanks. Mr. Mayor, through you, I'm happy to answer that question. It is currently under review by our property officer and asset coordinator with a view to catching up with Goulburn Murray Water very soon once they've finished doing the review of the initial document that we received from them. So currently under review is the short answer. And we expect to have a meeting with them, I'd say, over the next month as soon as we can arrange a time.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, can you give us a bit of a timeline, Ms. Alexander, or not? I mean, other than the proposed meeting, you know, in terms of signing the MOU.
Yep. So I would expect that we would have a draft to review at the meeting in the next month. And then from there, we would bring it back to council. So I would imagine we would have it back to council by the March meeting, just to hazard a guess, assuming that all goes well in that second meeting with GMW.
Okay, thank you. While I've got you there, I would just like to congratulate yourself and thank yourself and the CEO in carrying out this audit. It is long overdue, and I'm pleased that we finally have a clear picture of the relevant commitments between council and Goulburn Murray Water. Goulburn Murray Water, as we all know, are the water manager, but the lake is a significant asset and natural asset and economic driver for the Mansfield Shire. So it's important that we do get this right, and it does tie in with the Lake Eildon Activation Master Plan as well. So thank you for getting this far with the results of the motion from a couple of years ago, and I personally look forward to further advancement of this the original motion. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank in particular our asset coordinator, John Hodson. He's done a great job of pulling that information together.
Councillors, are there any other questions? Ms. Alexander, also, I've never seen that. I didn't know what assets we had, so I also agree with Councillor Sladen. I thought that audit was quite extensive, and to be honest, really surprising for someone who'd never looked at those assets that the council owned. Am I reading correctly that, and this is just total naivety, but am I reading correctly that GMW don't pay for anything there. Have I got that right, or is that have I misread something?
Short answer is yes.
That's quite a
That's a very polite answer, Ms. Alexander. I would have said bugger all, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, right. And I was going to ask, is there any reason why that is it never been offered or asked for, or why not?
Look, through you, Mr. Mayor, I'm not really sure on the history. Having said that, as we acknowledged in the report, that in our discussions with GMW, there was an acknowledgement and a willingness to look at a contribution. So they are willing to work with council on that, and are acknowledging there is a shared responsibility there. So yes, it is a work in progress, but they are happy to talk to us.
Okay. Any other questions, councillors? Sorry, Councillor Webb. Thanks, Kirsten, too, by the way. Thank you for that answer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick comment. I understand mid last year, I think the state government announced that all boating related fees would go back into the infrastructure from which they were generated. Will that this asset audit, will that tie into that, and we're able to actually make a submission and claim off that now? Is that correct?
Correct.
Good. Excellent. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Okay. Do we have a motion, councillors, for this item on the agenda? Councillor Sladen?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'm would like to move the motion that council receive and note the information presented in this report on Lake Eildon assets.
Thank you, Councillor Sladen. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Turn. Would you like to speak further, Councillor Sladen, to the motion?
Only briefly, Mr. Mayor, I explained earlier my reasons for getting this done, but it's it's critical that council and Goulburn Murray Water clearly identify the maintenance requirements of these assets around the lake, particularly now where we've got Tungarong Land and Non-Water Council involvement, Dalwipin involvement, to make sure that we are clear who is responsible for what and who is paying for what. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sladen. Councillor Turn, as seconder, would you like to say anything?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to commend Councillor Sladen on his work he's done in getting this audit done. I think, as he says, it's long overdue, and I'm well aware of the way Goulburn Murray Water like to dictate the terms, but often are reluctant to contribute in any way. Yeah, it's a good step forward for the future of the lake and tourism around the lake.
Thanks, Councillor Turn. Any other councillor like to add to that? Thank you. Those in favour of the motion? Motion is passed. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 13.2, the Infrastructure and Planning Directorate again is responsible for this project, the Mansfield Station Precinct project update. Is there any questions or clarification required of the report from the responsible officer? Councillor Sladen?
Pardon me. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Alexander, I have a couple of questions. The first being that when we look at the recommendation in your report, it does include alterations to the master plan that was formulated As your report says, with extensive community consultation, it was over more than a 12-month process. It had been endorsed, well, has been endorsed by council. We did have consultants work on it, and we are now looking at what I consider to be a major change with the civic space and the car park areas. A key element of the design of the precinct being reprioritised in the language that is in the report, and I would just like clarification as to why you believe that the current parking location is suitable and functional, as opposed to having an open civic space, which was a key component of the master plan, which allows for connectivity from the precinct through to the rest of the town.
Ms. Alexander?
Thanks. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks for the question, Councillor Sladden. In terms of the reprioritisation, I guess that comes up in the context of us applying for a number of grant applications at the moment and needing to decide where we devote council's the time and resources from an administration point of view. So we have tried to target those on the sub-projects or the components of the master plan that we think current grant funding opportunities will allow us to progress. In terms of the position or location of the car park, it is functional. Obviously, council has invested money in that in the past. It works quite well in terms of allowing people to access into both the Visitor Information Centre and also to the station building where the Historical Society are located. And we had feedback from a stakeholder meeting that the stakeholders like the Historical Society and the MCHAC and Gadaba did not see that as being a high priority compared to the other components of the master plan. So that was the reason why we were just highlighting that that's the feedback we got from the stakeholders that attended the meeting in October. And we'll put it back to council for your assessment or otherwise of that.
Thank you, Ms. Alexander. Councillor Sladden?
Yeah, no, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Ms. Alexander. This leads me to my next question in terms of, you talk about stakeholders and you listed 3 stakeholders there which have, well, their own interests in this precinct. Yet, when the project steering committee was formed, it had wider community involvement and community participation and community membership. Taking the advice of 3 organisations which have their own interests at heart, without my reading, this is my interpretation of the value and concept of the entire precinct, I believe is short-sighted. And to be, again, my words, pandering to special interest groups in a project that is designed to promote both the civic and the economic expansion of Mansfield Shire, I believe is very short-sighted. If you go back to the original master plan and look at that civic space and that car park, it is a significant component and is a real draw card in my mind in terms of attracting people to that space and allowing that through line, that connectivity to the rest of the to the rest of the town. Otherwise, if you leave the car park where it is, in my mind, you're putting up a barrier, a physical barrier for pedestrian movement through from the precinct to the remainder of the town.
So, do you have any further comment or?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, happy to address that, and it's probably worth the councillors knowing that the meeting in October was held in the context of us finalising grant that we had received from Regional Development Victoria. So we did need to equip that grant, and part of that grant was design of the heritage storage and display building and the All Abilities Playground, which were two key elements of the master plan. In particular, the heritage storage and display building, I mean, obviously the Mansfield Historical Society are a key stakeholder in that building, as they will be the user of it. And there's also a display area for the Toongarong as well, Toongarong items. So that was the focus, I guess, of that meeting. It was in relation to reviewing those designs. But obviously we got broader comment back from the meeting in terms of the relative priority of the elements of the master plan. So I guess that just gives you a bit of context. Obviously we do need to prioritise which project we approach first. And we do that by looking at, is the design progressed to an extent that we could then apply for funding? And certainly with those two projects, the design has been completed. And we obviously needed input from the stakeholders, being in particular the Mansfield Historical Society. So that was the background to that meeting.
Yeah.
Sorry, can I continue, Mr. Mayor?
Yeah. Please. Councillor Slayton, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Alexander, I have no issue with the heritage display and storage building and the All Abilities Playground. Yes, they are, they are key components of the master plan as well. I have no issue with that. And yes, it is expected that you would consult with those stakeholders involved. But taking the advice, I mean, as your report says, after discussions with the Historical Society, let's get rid of the car park. Well, sorry, that doesn't wash with me. And that is still a key component. Getting rid of it, can't we just park it and then look for funding further on?
Just a sec, Councillor Slayton, Madam CEO.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and to answer Councillor Slayton's question, absolutely. You absolutely can park it. The report and the comments in the report, what have come out of those discussions, and perhaps the deeper understanding which Councillor Slayton has from being involved in the previous in the project of developing the master plan is relevant. Remember, councillors, the report has no status in terms of your motion. It is only a guide, and it says that there have been some conversations. Council can put a motion forward in any which way it likes, and it doesn't need to include that component if it doesn't agree with it. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, any other councillors wish to make a comment? Just sorry, I must admit, I don't know the history of this project, but it appears to be, Councillor Slayton, your question appears to be around the car park, and I see parking at the moment in this town. It's a massive problem, and we just don't have anywhere near enough. I don't understand why we would want to. I think what you're saying is that we want to get rid of the car park. Or I'm misinterpreting that. And why would you get rid of the car park when we have absolutely nowhere near enough parking in this town? Is my question. I've clearly missed something, obviously.
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah. Look, if you go back and if you actually read the master plan, you'll see that it's not removing the car park; it is relocating the car park. So that car park will be relocated to come in off Early Street, next to Jenkins. So it's not removing it; it is relocating it, which then opens up as a civic space what is now the car park And if you look at the design, it's a very attractive design, very welcoming design. And the car park has been relocated to around the corner.
So we're really, again, I'm just trying to ascertain why we get rid of a car park. That's all.
No, we're not getting rid of it. We are relocating it. Yes.
I take your point, but why can't we have both car parks? Being that we're so short of car parks in this town. And I only ask the question because there's nowhere in this town to park for, at the moment, I think at least there's some caravans / trailers being parked there at the moment. It's taking some of the pressure off, but it's nowhere near enough. And here we are looking to take a section of car parking out of the town. Anyway, that's
We do have long vehicle facility, car parking facility in Hyatt Street, both ends of Hyatt Street that is available. Again, in my mind, it compromises the intention of the whole precinct master plan by retaining a car park in the middle of what is intended to be a social activity, pedestrian activity zone. And to put a car park in it just does not make sense.
Okay.
In my mind.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Sutton. Councillor Webb, you've got a question, and so does Councillor Raby, but firstly, you, Councillor Webb.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just sort of want to pick apart sort of what's being said a little bit, because I think we're getting a bit confused over a couple of the different topics. So from what I can understand, what Councillor Sutton's saying is that by retaining the car park in its current location, it really sort of doesn't serve the whole idea of the vision of the master plan, which I tend to agree with. It certainly separates the whole precinct out, whereas it was meant to be one cohesive space prior to that. Mr. Mayor, your comments in regards to car parking, I personally think the location of the car parking next to the Visitor Information Centre isn't really applicable to the centre of town. It's a good 10-minute walk or 5-minute walk to the centre of town anyway, and I don't see it being overutilised in its current location anyway. If anything, sort of moving it to Early Street would bring it closer to things like Foodworks and Jenkins as well, to be used better. So I think we need to separate the car parking situation and sort of bring it back just to the station precinct itself. And I tend to agree with Councillor Sutton that by removing the car park, it would definitely sort of fracture the master plan as it sits today.
Councillor Raby. Thanks, Councillor Webb. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I disagree with that. Quite frankly, the problem we've got at the moment is long vehicles with caravans. We've been saying forever, you know, come to Mansfield. This is a tourist town, and then there's no parking for them. Look, I would personally like to have more time to look at the master plan in its entirety, given that I've only been a councillor for 3 months. This has been going obviously for years, and it's going to require more time for me to make a decision on this and form a well-defined view. But at the moment, driving into town, I'm not forming that view at the moment. So if I could have more time to do this, that would be appreciated.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. Any Councillor Teen? Oh, sorry, Madam CEO.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, what I was going to suggest, because the car parking is you know, it does not need to be discussed tonight. It was just the opportunity to report on those conversations. I would suggest that 1 and 2, if councillors were inclined to, that we do not need an issue on the resolution on the car parking. It is not essential tonight. And from what I am hearing is the councillors would like to appreciate the master plan better, and I would actually advise that as well. So Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Slade?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm prepared to move a motion that includes one, the council notes the update provides on the key elements of the Station Precinct Master Plan provided in this report, and two, progresses applications for funding the elements of the Station Precinct Master Plan as opportunities arise. I'm prepared to move that motion.
Is there a seconder to that motion? Councillor Webb? Thank you. Would you like to speak further to that motion, Councillor Slade?
I think I've said enough, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Webb?
Just that it's obviously a topic which requires a bit more picking apart, and I don't think where the council's in a position to make a call on that car park situation just yet. So let's put it to the side and move with the rest of it as we can.
Okay. Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Riley?
Yeah, I agree. We should park the car parking to another time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Boom, boom.
Okay. Councillor Toon, you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, look, I think obviously the funding for this precinct is going to be ongoing, and I think it's that the car park where it is serves a good purpose at the moment, and I can't see the need to for that car park to be removed from the plan as yet until we've had further time to look at it. And I think that overall, there was one other question I had on that recommendation. It was regarding something different. It was regarding the All Abilities Playground, and I just had a question for Kirsten about what the cost of that All Abilities Playground is going to be, given that we've got another item on the agenda later on regarding the playground at the other end of town. So I wonder if I could just get an update on that, or just a question on the cost of it.
Thanks, Councillor Teen. Through you, Mr. Mayor. There was an initial cost estimate done. Obviously, we haven't tested the market on it at all yet because we would need funding confirmed first. The initial QS estimate was quite substantial because it's a big playground. I think it was of the order of 1.8 million, but I might just throw to our manager operations and capital works and just confirm that but obviously being a playground, you do have some scope to sort of increase or reduce as desired. So
yeah, thanks, Kirsten. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the master plan shows, as adopted, it shows two separate playgrounds, one that they call the All Abilities Adventure Playground and the other is the All Abilities Playground. And combined, the order of magnitude that Kirsten gave is about right. We looked at obviously being a funding and grant dependent project, ways of being able to move forward with pieces of it. If we separated that out, we could deliver one of those two playgrounds for around the same budget as the playground we're also considering at the Botanic Park. So in the order of around 600,000. So there are those two ways of looking at it, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Richard. Thank you. Mr. Castletown, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. If there's no more questions on that, Those in favour of the motion put forward by Councillor Sladen? Motion is passed. Thank you. Item 13.3 is under the Community and Corporate Services Directorate with General Manager Chris Snook. And firstly, an update on the Mansfield Shire Instrument of Appointment and Authorisation Schedule. Are there any questions or clarifications required from councillors on this report? Nothing at all. Mr. Snook, would you like to add anything further to it, or?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think the only thing we'll add, and it goes as a note, that the delegations and authorisations have now been updated in accordance with the recent appointments.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a motion for this item? Councillor Webb?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just the motion would be, as written, page 36 of today's agenda, that Council, in the exercise of the powers conferred by Section 188 of the Planning Environment Act 1987 and other legislation referred to in Schedule 11A, Instrument of Appointment and Authorisations, resolves point 1, 2 and 3 as written.
Okay, thank you. And do we have a seconder? Councillor Sladen? Would you like to speak further to that, Councillor Webb?
No, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Sladen?
No, it's just a process. Thank you.
Those in favour? Thank you. Item 13.3.2, regarding the Rates and Financial Assistance Program. Are there any questions or clarifications of this item? Report? Councillor Tan?
Yeah, just one question through you to the CEO, Mr. Mayor, regarding the recommendations that the CEO be empowered to implement temporary rate assistance programs in response to pandemic at any time in the future. I was just wondering, could that apply to individual ratepayers or ratepayer groups or ratepayers in general?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will refer to our Manager of Business and Performance to answer that, because she'll be able to provide you with some insight into why that might be streamlined and how that would occur. Thank you.
Thanks, Kayleen. Through the Mayor, it would be potentially all of the above, Councillor. So it's more about having the flexibility for the organisation to respond really quickly to changes in the economic environment. So if we were to go back into lockdown orders where organisations, businesses were expected to shut down, people were expected to be stood down from their jobs, we could react really quickly without needing to wait potentially for another whole month to get a report up to council or having to call an emergency council meeting. Generally, my advice would be that relief would be applied on a broader basis to address equity within the community, but it would depend on the specific circumstances. There may be certain parts of the economy affected, there may be others that aren't, which may affect different ratepayer categories, but generally we would look at it on either a differential basis or a, I don't know, potentially a pensioner versus non-pensioner basis. But as the recommendation advises, we would then bring a report to council so that those decisions would be advised to you after the fact so that you'd be aware.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Councillor Webb?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and through you, Mr. Mayor, and probably directed towards Mr. Snook or the CEO. Just in terms of the advertising communication around this particular policy, are we planning just to do a bit of a, whether it be an ad in the paper or something over Facebook or something like that, just to sort of make sure everyone's aware of exactly what's happening?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, again, I will refer to our Manager of Business and Performance to answer the question. Thank you.
Yeah, we have all ratepayers' contact details, so any communication would be sent specifically and directly to ratepayers. Whether we have their email addresses, we would do an email blast. If we have postal addresses, it would be postal. I think the next round of rate notices are about to go out soon, so we could potentially do it with that mail out. I'm not sure whether we've missed the print deadline or not, but that's how we would do it.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Councillor Sladen?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question for Ms. Kinnersley. Given that, you know, the amount of applications that have come in are less than, well, around about 1% of the total number of ratepayers or rate assessments, I would imagine that this is not having a huge impact on our cash flow. Would that be correct?
Yeah, again, through the Mayor, I agree with you. It's not having a significant impact on our cash flow. You can see in the report there is a graph that shows our arrears are at about 450, which is higher than previous years, but we also have a higher rate base. So as overall pool of rates and charges goes up each year, so proportionately, we're pretty similar, and it's not impacting our cash flows at this point in time. Okay.
And what consideration was given to the state government's or the Ombudsman's commencement of an investigation into how councils around the state are responding to financial hardship? Was any consideration given to maybe deferring until that process has been completed?
Yeah, so my understanding of the Ombudsman's review is that they will be looking at existing policies in place as well as a response to COVID, and then providing best practice guidelines as a result of that review. So I believe that our financial hardship policy still provides the avenues for those that need it to be able to access rate relief. And I think that will be a massive part of the Ombudsman's review as well. So I think we have those provisions in place. And once the Ombudsman review comes down, we can then tweak that policy if we need to meet best practice guidelines if it's not already met.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ms. Kinnersley. The answer I was looking for was that our rate relief policy does continue, and you just confirmed that. Thank you.
Any other questions, councillors? Ms. Kinnersley, I just have one question then. When does council classify something as a bad debt? At what level does it get to when you're at the stage that it's got to be called in or written off? And how many of our debts are at that level? What amount of money is at that level at the moment that you think we're going to have to write off?
So rates and charges, we never write them off. So legislation provides that they are secured over the property that they relate to. So what that means is if it's not paid, when that property changes hands, whether it's sold or whether the owner passes away and it goes through an estate process, council then recovers the unpaid rates and charges out of the proceeds from the sale of that property. So for that reason, council never writes them off. They just get deferred and they sit there waiting until that transfer happens. We have very rare occasions of bad debts in other parts of revenue, but not related to rates and charges. Sorry, there was another part to your question I've forgotten.
Yeah, when does it get to this? When does it get to the stage? How long overdue before you start enforcing procedures?
Debt collection. That's right. So I don't have that particular date on me. I'd say it would be at least 90 days over before it would go to debt collection, but I'd need to refer back to our debt recovery procedures. And I'm sorry, I don't have that at hand, but I can circulate that outside of the meeting. In terms of the volume or the dollars that we have in debt collection at the moment, because debt collection has been paused, I don't have that data on hand at the moment either.
So, I guess, so if you say 90 days, roughly how much is over 90 days?
450,000.
It's a 450,000 you're referring to.
Yeah. But again, I need to check that date. I'm not sure if it is 100% 90 days or not.
Okay. Any other questions, councillors? Do we have a motion for this item? Councillor Webb?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just taking the recommendation as written on page 41 of tonight's agenda, that council follows the 4 dot points as listed there.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. A seconder for that motion? No seconders, councillors? Councillor Rabi?
Yeah, I'll second the motion by Councillor Webb. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Webb, would you like to add anything further to it?
I guess my only comment would be that it's time, I guess, for both council business and everyone to sort of recommence their lives and continue on. I'm not a fan of debt collection or charging interest by any stretch of the imagination. But you know, at the end of the day, we need to get back to our lives, and we can see that this will have a minimal effect on our ratepayer base, and it's time to move on.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. Councillor Rabi, do you want to add further?
No, thank you.
Those in favour of the motion? The motion is passed. Thank you. Assemblies of councils. I'll take that. Is there any questions on that at all, or clarification required, councillors? Take that as being read. Do we have a motion for that item?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I'll move that council receive and note the Assembly of Councillors report on the period 8th to 22nd of December 2020.
Thanks, Councillor Tehan. A seconder for the motion? Thanks, Councillor Raby. Those in favour of the motion? Thanks, councillors. It's passed. Motion is passed. Item 15, the councillors' resolutions register. Do we have a motion for that, this item? Thanks, Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My motion being that council receive and note the council resolution register at 14th January 2021.
Thank you. A seconder for the motion? Councillor Sladen, thank you. All those in favour of the motion? Motion is passed. Thank you. Item 16.1 is the Mansfield Shire Audit and Risk Advisory Committee minutes of the meeting. Do we have a motion for this item? Thank you. Councillor Rabi.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a recommendation or motion that the council receive the minutes of the Mansfield Shire Audit and Risk Committee meeting held on the 7th of December 2020.
Thanks, Councillor Rabi. A seconder? Councillor Webb, thank you. All those in favour of the motion? Thank you. Motion is passed. Item 16.2, the Chair's report to the for the Audit and Risk Committee. Do we have a motion for this, please? Councillor Webb.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My motion being that council receive and note the Mansfield Shire Audit and Risk Committee Chair's report as at 31st August 2020.
Thanks, Councillor Webb. A seconder for the motion? Councillor Rabi. Second, those in favour? Thanks, councillors. The motion is passed. We now wish to close the meeting to the members of the public to discuss a couple of confidential reports. Can I have a motion to support this item, please?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, have we got the Chair's report to Council from the Audit and Risk Committee?
I move that motion, Councillor Sutton.
Oh, was it? Sorry, I thought it was just the minutes that you did. Sorry. I didn't.
Nope.
It's in the motion.
Sorry, beg your pardon. I'll
Councillor-
concentrate.
I'll forgive you. It's all right.
Just going back to item 18 regarding closure of the meeting to members of the public. Can we have a recommendation supporting this motion, please? Or sorry, a motion supporting the recommendation. Thanks, Councillor Raby.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I motion that the meeting be closed to members of the public under section 66 2A of the Local Government Act 2020 to consider confidential information as defined by section 3(1) of the LGA 2020. As council business information being information that would prejudice the council's position in commercial negotiations if prematurely released. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Raby. Is there a seconder for the motion? Thanks, Councillor Webb. Those in favour? Thanks, councillors. That motion is passed and the meeting is closed for the presentation of confidential reports, and we will return after that. Thank you very much. So, councillor, are we offline at the moment?
Can they come back yet? Or are you still talking?
No, I'm putting you back in the breakout room.
I can join it. I've got the ability to if you
Oh,
want me to.
thank you. Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
No worries.
Are we all on there?
Yep, you're right to go.
Okay. I think the meeting is, we're at item 21, the close of the meeting. Would you like to do? I'd like to thank ratepayers and residents who, or the ratepayers who've made representation tonight. To the ratepayers residents who've been online, thank you. Thank you to Madam CEO. Thank you to the General Manager of Infrastructure and Kirsten Alexander. Thank you, General Manager of Community and Corporate, Chris Snook. Thank you. Our Governance Administration, Mandy, thank you. And the other executives that turned up, thank you very much. Thank you, councillors, for your time. And once we go off there, can I just stick around just for 1 second? So thank you and good night. Thank you.